Okay. Now we're going to move on to item 3, Carlsbad Boulevard pedestrian improvement, and we'll have again engineer Kim and Jim.
Thank you again, commissioners. I'm happy to present the Carlsbad Boulevard pedestrian improvement project. And again, I will be introducing the project, and senior engineer Jim will be presenting the details. So I'd like to go over some background. First, the recommendation before you is to support staff's recommendation to implement the proposed improvements at 6 uncontrolled crosswalks on Carlsbad Boulevard. Next slide. Some background on this project. On September 24th of 2019, staff presented the proposed project to City Council, who approved it with a fairly specific scope of work, which will be presented later. On January 6th of 2020, we presented the proposed project to our Traffic and Mobility Commission for the first time. And on August 2nd of 2020, we presented the conceptual design to the commission and received some feedback. And so based on that feedback, we've revised the plans and are wanting to share the revisions with the commission for your input. And some background on Carlsbad Boulevard as it relates to the mobility element. The posted speed limit on Carlsbad Boulevard north of Tamarack, where these improvements are proposed, is 30 miles per hour per a valid engineering and traffic survey. Carlsbad Boulevard is identified as an identity street in the general plan mobility element. And the mobility element has specific recommendations, including traffic calming devices such as curb extensions or enhanced pedestrian crossings. And we use those recommendations to form the basis of our proposed improvements on the boulevard. And with that, for a more specific look at the improvements, I'll turn over the presentation to Senior Engineer Miriam Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. And I just want to point out that our consultant, Rick Engineering, Mark Hugard from Rick Engineering, is also with us today to answer any design questions that you may have at the end. And this map shows you the 6 locations where improvements are proposed. Army Navy crosswalk adjacent to Army Navy Academy, Oak Avenue, Sycamore Avenue, Maple Avenue, Cherry Avenue, and Hemlock Avenue. The major improvement proposed at these uncontrolled crosswalks include curb extension where feasible, and total of 5 locations where curb extension is recommended. And the second feature is the pedestrian activated in pavement flashing lights to augment the existing rectangular rapid flashing beacons already out there. And we'll also upgrade the crosswalk markings to continental style high visibility crosswalks, and also some green bike lane treatments approaching the crosswalk as well as through intersections. So now I'll walk you through each location in more specific and highlight some of the improvements. The first one is Army Navy Academy. And before that, I want to mention we received some comments from Commissioner Pensier, and I would like to address some of those as much as possible during the presentation. And the first location I want to walk you through is Army Navy Academy. This crosswalk is a mid-block crosswalk, and bulb outs as proposed for both the east and west side of the crossing. Just want to highlight some of these symbols to you. These are the in pavement roadway flashing lights that will augment the existing RFB, bulb outs, continental crosswalk striping, and also the green pink bike lane treatments. At this particular location, we'll highlight about 50 feet of the bike facilities beyond the yield line approaching the crosswalk, just to highlight there's a bike lane right there. I think last time, one of the comments that we received is cars actually utilizing, especially in the southbound approach, utilizing the buffer and then the bike lane to illegally bypass traffic. So with the highlighted bike facilities, we're hoping will reduce that illegal action. And also according to existing striping, there is a conflict area. This is a dedicated right turn lane approaching Cypress Avenue. So there's like a weave and conflicts between the bike lane and the right turn vehicles. We're proposing dashed green paint bike lane at this conflict area. And again, as Mr. Kim mentioned, there's specific scope for this project. And so we're not proposing to change any of the existing striping or changing any of the parking. I know we'll recommend Pansea's comment is how about reverse diagonal parking, but we're not supposed to make any changes to parking or striping as part of this project. And I want to highlight that this look with the two arrows pavement legend, that is specifically for pedestrians. We feel that staff feel that it will be beneficial as part of this project because of all these 6 uncontrolled crosswalk have pretty high pedestrian volumes, and it's very important to kind of remind the pedestrians that it is still an uncontrolled crosswalk. They should be looking before they cross, and so this pavement legend will kind of help remind them of that. Second location is Oak Avenue. This location bulb out is proposed at the northeast corner of the intersection, southeast corner of the intersection. And I want to highlight this particular green paint, dash green paint treatments at the intersection. So I want to point out that in the conceptual design, when we presented last time, staff proposed actually dash the green bike lane treatments approaching the intersection. We feel that it is a valid application. However, we received comments from you all commissioners that green paint bike lane approaching the intersection potentially would discourage right turners from getting closer to the curb and making the right turn. So we want to accommodate that and come up with this solutions instead of highlighting the bike facility approaching the intersection, but we'll highlight the path of the bikers through the intersections. So the right turners, if they make a right turn from their lane, they will know this is the conflict area. And I also want to point out that we are proposing new streetlights at this location. After performing the photometric analysis, we want to make sure that the lighting level is at the recommended level at this location. Sycamore Avenue, bulb out is proposed on the west side of the crosswalk. Just want to point out that because of the bulb out, bike lane would need to be shifted slightly out closer to the travelway as shown here. And the buffer will be removed at these locations. You'll also have all the other improvement in pavement lighting and the look pavement legend and the green paint bike lane. Maple Street, bulb out is not feasible because of the existing roadway width constraint. So I want to highlight we'll propose 1 new street lights on the west side of the crosswalk to meet the lighting illumination level recommended. And then also the green paint, dash green paint through the intersections, and then the green bike lane approaching the crosswalk. Cherry Avenue, again, bulb out is proposed on the west side of the crosswalk, as you can see here. Just want to highlight that there's an area right here. It's some sort of emergency access, and we want to preserve that and maintain that. So with the proposed bulb out, all this area will be work curb. No parking is allowed. So, if it's for emergency access, it will be maintained. Lastly, at Hemlock, again, bulb out is proposed on the west side. And at this location, there are 2 existing ADA parking, and we preserve both ADA parking spaces on both sides of the crosswalk, as you can see here. I want to point out that with the new improvements, these ADA parking spaces will be all 8 feet wide. Even though, we're showing 7 feet, it's a little narrow towards the end, the parking space, the parking width. But at this location with the proposed bulb out improvements, the 2 ADA parking spaces will be ADA compliant. Next step of the project, I'm pleased to announce to you that the city has been notified last week that the project was selected for Highway Safety Improvement Program exit funds in the amount of $591,600 $600 for the construction of the project. We're too excited for this. That will pretty much cover a big chunk of the construction costs. And staff, next step, will request for exit funding allocation from Caltrans, and we'll finalize the project construction package, and we'll bring the project to City Council for approval and appropriations of necessary funds to necessary, with the grant for construction. We anticipate the construction of the project will begin at the end of 2021. Again, the recommendations for this item is for the commission to support staff recommendation to implement the proposed traffic calming improvements at 6 uncontrolled crosswalk on Carlsbad Boulevard. And that concludes our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer. Do we have any questions? I see one hand. Okay, 2. Going once, going twice. We're going to start with Commissioner Pensier.
Okay, several of my questions were answered. Not in a way I had hoped, but the restrictions that apparently the City Council has placed on this project is no restriping whatsoever. So that people have to stay where they are now restricted. I'd like to go back though to the picture, the first one on Army and Navy Academy, because that's where, from what my observations, that is the most difficult of the crossings, especially southbound, as all that empty space is so inviting to motorists and motorcycles when traffic backs up from the traffic light at Beach Avenue, and it backs up all the way past this intersection and past Mountain Drive, actually sometimes all the way over the bridge and back towards the roundabout. And people who want to bypass all that traffic just simply move over. I don't think the green paint will stop them from doing that. The other thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, drivers will do almost anything to avoid hitting a cyclist if they recognize them or if they see them. And the further you are to the right, the more you drop off the radar screen. And so the position that I take when I go through this intersection while I'm riding is in the buffer. I pretend that the buffer is the bike lane. And that way I continue straight across to the existing bike lane. And, if people want to stay in that bike lane, that's fine. But that means that when they make this crossing, it's their job to, when they go to this dashed green paint part, they're going to have to look back behind them, and then it's going to be their responsibility to negotiate with the drivers, apparently, to stay in the bike lane. So basically, you're causing the cyclist to zigzag through this area. And it's something that I don't see why we should have to do. If you can't simply provide that dash green paint to go straight from the new part of the bike lane, at least back to the buffer, so that the drivers have to do the yielding rather than the cyclists. The other question I had, and maybe I can just go ahead and do that one at the same time. So this is the intersection where it seems to apply the most. If you have the buffers that extend on both sides of the crosswalk, And yet all the traffic, all the legal traffic anyway, is coming from the left. So what good does it do to provide all this information, all the this concrete on the right side of the crosswalk, unless you're trying to protect the pedestrians from wrong way traffic or something else? It just doesn't seem like this is necessary. And it also removes a parking space or two, which is something you probably want to preserve. So is there something that I'm not aware of? Is there something in the manual on uniform traffic control devices that you have to do this? Or is this something that we just didn't think about? That we're just going to make it look the same on both sides, regardless of whether it makes any sense. And that, and then the last question is, when you get to the center, this is a place where, you know, the crossing is so long right now that the drivers that are on the northbound side, when you start crossing this road, the people going northbound, if they don't see anybody, they actually accelerate when they get to this point, and they don't stop at this stop bar. If any of them do, they're likely to get hit from behind by the drivers that are tailgating them, because once they get through that traffic light at Beach Avenue, after having endured the diagonal crossings at Grand and Carlsbad Village Drive, they're anxious to make up time. And you can see that with the speeds on the northbound side versus the southbound side. So what they did in at an uncontrolled intersection like this in Solana Beach was to, when they get to this center divide, they take the crossing and angle it to the right. And that way the pedestrians are facing the traffic that's coming toward them. And regardless of which direction they go, they're always directed to face the traffic that is approaching them. And I'm wondering why it can't be done here. This one in particular, you seem to have a lot of latitude on where you put this. So that, I guess that's the end of my questions on that. And then further south, I don't think you have that option in most cases. Maybe in one or two of them, it looks like you might be able to preserve a parking space if you can remove the right side bulb out.
If you'd like me to respond to those comments, let me see if I can remember them clearly. I think the first one was the dashed green treatment downstream in the southbound direction. It is, like Miriam said, to highlight the conflict area. There is a bit of a jog for the bicyclists to negotiate. But one of the things that you mentioned, could we widen the dashed green to form kind of a continuous line between the buffer and the beginning of the bike lane after the conflict area? I think we could probably accommodate that so that there's not a visible jog in that right edge line for the vehicle traffic. Yeah, so I think that's doable. So if Miriam and Mark could note that. The second comment, I wasn't quite sure. Was it why are the curb extensions symmetrical with the? Yes. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's something I think that we did to increase that area as much as possible. There may be some things that Mark Hugar, the project engineer, could address in terms of amenities on those concrete areas, but we could definitely look at modifying at least the downstream sides to account for the loss in parking and not have that 45-degree cutout that would eat into the parking. So I think we could make adjustments there. Mark, do you have any comments on the possibilities of making the curb extensions non-symmetrical to accommodate more parking per Commissioner Pensier's?
Yes, I think that downstream, there may be some opportunity to shrink that down. Say for the one going southbound, I know there's quite a bit of utilities, sewer, water, and gas in that area, so there might not be an opportunity to shrink that down. If you're going southbound, it'd be as you approach the crosswalk. But then we can check that and also check drainage as well. We'll verify that if we want to shrink that down. I know going northbound, there is a bench there right now. So today there's only like if you're sitting on that bench, maybe 2-3 feet, then you're on the street or the parking.
I think we're talking the other side of the stripes on the downstream side, not the approach side, but the exit side.
Exactly.
Yes, exit side for both locations. I think there's
okay, because I think
that opportunity.
you just put the cursor on the entry side when you said
I'm sorry.
there. So
Yeah, that area.
Right. And so, and please note that some of the things that Mark mentioned need to be considered, and that's existence of any utilities. We can't leave valve covers or manholes kind of hanging on a curb. And so if there's utilities that need to be accounted for, that's one of the factors that we would be looking at. And also drainage. We need to make sure that these curb lines don't pool water. And that may be one of the reasons why they're configured the way they are. But we will definitely take a look at modifying those downstream sides to increase the parking, because I do believe that that is a premium that we want to preserve per Pete's comments, which is.
Yeah, just a couple of comments to add on that, John and Mark. We also want to consider the staging area for the crossing. So we don't want too abrupt of a curb extension. And then also you have to think of the pedestrian approach to that crossing. So pedestrians they don't like to walk and then turn a 90-degree angle. They like to more or less go from point A to point B in the shortest and straightest path possible. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure it's a comfortable experience for the pedestrian crossing as well. So commissioners, I hear the comments and we will consider them to, of course, make the best balance for all the users and the parking in the situation. But we do want to really optimize those crossings for the pedestrians as well. And then also, and I understand we're talking about the downstream side of the crossings, but putting concrete out in the street is the best way to change driver behavior, specifically speeding behaviors. So yeah, it's definitely, we don't want to reduce the distance or increase the travel ways in any way out there.
And then I think the last.
Then the other question is, if you want to make it that wide, why not just slide it upstream instead of, in both cases? So slide the one on the bottom to the left, slide the one on the top to the right. If you want to make it that wide, why wouldn't that be done? Because
and again, that will be a consideration. We will look at reconfiguring the curb extensions, and it may involve something like you're describing, Pete, or it may, it may involve something else. But your point is taken, and we'll go ahead and make those modifications. The last one is a jog in the pedestrian path in the median. Unfortunately, that was not part of the scope of this project. It would add too much in terms of cost it would result in a reconfiguration of the existing ped ramp locations. So it was not part of the scope. And so that's the reason why it's not going to be considered for this project. And I know what you're saying. There are crosswalk designs that utilize the jog to ideally reorient the pedestrians to face oncoming traffic as they cross the median. This would be the only location that where that would be possible due to the limitations of the medians in the other locations. But unfortunately, it's not a part of the scope of this project.
Okay. I know I had other commissioners had questions. If you can please stop sharing so I can see. So we're going to go to Vice Chair Perez, and then I saw Commissioner Linky raise his hand.
Yeah, thank you. Just one question in regards to, do we have overlapping projects or project improvements on Sycamore, Maple, Cherry, and Hemlock Avenues? I just recall that reviewing a proposal for, I think it was like the northbound side of Carlsbad Boulevard. I was just wondering with staff if that's ongoing, or did we approve that, if that was struck down or not? Or am I just completely off?
No, I know for the southbound side, on the west side, there's a project that we're doing that is going to propose sidewalk improvements on that west side that may impact our project, but we're in coordination with the project manager for that effort and making sure that we're coordinated. So we're aware of that one. On the northbound side, I'm not aware of a conflicting project at this point, unless someone else has that information.
Yeah, I thought it was, just to clarify, I thought it was on the east side. I think it was like Hemlock, they were talking about sidewalk improvements. So it's just more of trying to understand if we have anything overlapping or not, but we can pin that. It's not a problem.
Yeah, for the west side for sure, and we're aware of that project.
Okay. I'm good. Sorry. Thank you.
And
Did we lose Chair Gokin?
I think so. So I know Commissioner Linky, you had a question.
Actually, I think you mostly covered it. I want to say congratulations again on getting the HSIP funds. That's excellent.
Yes.
And I read Commissioner Pensier's questions, and they were all very astute. Unfortunately, it sounds like the scope of the project won't allow that, but a great set of questions, and I will support recommending the project, and we'll make a motion to do so.
Sorry, before we do have a few public comments that I do need to read into the record. And I will pull those up now. So the first, looks like we have 4 here total. So the first is from Simon Friedman on behalf of Carlsbad MyGen branch of the Sierra Club. We have reviewed the proposed pedestrian improvements in staff's memo for April 5th, 2021. Note green striping on Carlsbad Boulevard north of Grand Street. We think this is a good step towards improving bike safety. However, we also believe the green striping should continue on both sides of the intersection. In order to implement the goals of the sustainability plan in TDM and to improve biker safety, we believe it is imperative that this pattern of green striping be continued south of Grand Avenue on Carlsbad Boulevard down to Poinsettia in a manner indicated on the proposals we have previously submitted. We have also proposed signage to be installed at some of these intersections. There has been an explosion in the sale of e-bikes, And we believe that if Carlsbad Boulevard is made more bike friendly along its entire length, this will encourage many more people to get out on their bikes. This in turn will help reduce single occupancy car trips, reduce greenhouse gas production, and improve the health of Carlsbad's residents. The major goal here is to provide a bright demonstrative display at the intersections that will encourage residents to get out on their bikes or e-bikes. This will have a ripple effect as more and more people see residents on their bikes. They too will be encouraged to get on their bikes. We urge the commission to make this a priority and set a goal that all intersections discussed in our proposals restricted, painted green, and signed by the end of this year. We believe this is entirely doable as we are simply asking for an application of paint and installation of signage in all instances. No engineering studies should be required. Thank you. Second, from Jody Brenton. I've lived on Saddle Drive for 21 years. On behalf of my family, neighbors, and our visitors, we greatly appreciate your attention to this matter. The pandemic has brought a surge of visitors to Calavera Mountain. Sorry, this is appearing to be for the wrong item, so it's just out of place.
Yeah, that one's for a later one, the restriped tamarack, I believe.
Yep. So I will skip over that and we'll come to that when we get to that item. Next is from Judy Frankel. It seems you may have missed Bike Walk Carlsbad at a stakeholder in the city that has input from the cycling community here. With regard to green striping through an intersection, how is this in accordance with the MUTCD to put a bike lane through an intersection? Please show where this occurs in the MUTCD. Dash striping is done within 200 feet of an intersection to show where the merge zone is for a motorist to merge into the bike lane before an intersection in order to make a turn from the right edge of the road as is required by law. It also makes it clear to cyclists that bike lane is ending at the intersection and they are passing through an intersection where a motorist may make a right turn. And if they are behind the motorist making a turn to move out into the travel lane, to pass on the left. Putting a bike lane through an intersection is a hazard. It is unclear to motorists and cyclists. Motorists should be moving to the right to make the turn well before the intersection, should not be turning across the bike lane from the travel lane. That is equivalent to making a right turn from the left lane. Cyclists should be prepared to merge into the travel lane to pass right turning motorists and to be more visible to left turning motorists coming towards them, who are turning across their path so as not to be hidden by a line of cars to their left. A cyclist was killed in Encinitas on Leucadia Boulevard where striping remained through an intersection at Moonstone Drive. A truck turned right into the cyclist who was thinking he was safe in the bike lane, not aware there was an intersection. The striping was left in air and removed after the death. Thank you for your attention and clarification. And last, from Mary Hassing. Commission members and staff, regarding bike safety lanes, I am pleased to see green striping that will be added to Carlsbad Boulevard north of Grand Street, according to staff's memo on the proposed pedestrian improvements. I am disappointed, however, that the striping will not continue south to Poinsettia and will not be on both sides of the street. I had hoped Carlsbad would prioritize safe bike lanes as Encinitas and Solana Beach have done. With the increase in biking last year, especially families on e-bikes, it's imperative that we do all we can to keep cyclists safe. The green striping is a strong, effective signal to drivers to watch for bikes and give them space. And the bright striping encourages residents who are hesitant to ride our streets to get out on their bikes, leave their cars at home. I ask you to reconsider the limited proposal and move more swiftly in making Carlsbad a truly bike-friendly city. That concludes the public comments.
I just want to acknowledge that Chair Gokin is back online.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I get so focused on your guys' discussions that I missed my computer telling me it's going to die, and then it just shut off. I was freaking out because I'm so into your discussion about safety and traffic crossing and so on. So my apologies. And then my apologies to Nathan that I said we're going to go to public comments, and then I kept going to commissioners. Again, I was so focused on their discussion. So it seems that the public comment was taken care of, and we had all the commissioner comments taken care of. Yes, no more commissioner comments on this item. Okay, I see two. So I saw Commissioner Hunter's hand first, and then Commissioner Link is still on the line. it seems.
I'd like Pete to comment on Judy Frankel's comments on the crossing, because I know Pete has a whole lot of experience and opinions on that.
And
Okay,
if Pete, I can comment on that as well, specifically if the commissioners would like that, but
Yeah, I'd like to hear John's also, and maybe Pete, you can throw it in first, and John, you can wrap them up with the realities and things.
Mhm.
By the way, I like what the whole plan, so I'm just throwing that in there as a positive note. So.
Okay, so Commissioner Pensia, you want to go first, and then we'll go to Mr. Kim.
Okay, first of all, I can't comment on Ms. Frankel's comments because we're not allowed to do that per the Brown Act. However, one of my comments.
You are, because it's
You are.
So right now you are, because it's on the agenda item. The comments that are
it's
not
okay.
on agenda
All right.
items.
Okay. Well, it actually was one of the comments that I had made in writing beforehand. I made it in a different way. She had asked, where is that in the MUTCD? And I don't know that it is. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. But so my question ahead of time was, what do we do to make sure that this change won't make things worse with respect to drivers making a right turn from the travel lane? And I suggested that we do some kind of a survey beforehand and find out what people think. Show them a drawing. So if you're a driver and you're coming up to this thing, where are you going to make your turn? Are you going to are you going to pull over into the dash part of the bike lane and make it from the right edge of the road, or are you going to make it from the number 2 lane? And just see what the consensus is, because what I see when I'm out there riding my bike is people making the turn from the travel lane. It happens all the time on northbound Carlsbad Boulevard. And in fact, I usually don't use that section of road. I turn right on Tamarack and go out and take the bike trail to get through the city, because anytime I ride there, I'm set up for a right hook. In fact, after that almost happened to me and 2 cars ran into each other because the driver next to me, who was not signaling and slowed down, I didn't know what they were doing, so I slowed down too. And then the driver that was tailgating hit the driver that was next to me. So to avoid that, I just don't do that anymore unless there's no traffic out there and I can use the number 2 lane. I just don't ride there. So I'm very concerned that it's already happening. We know for sure that right hooks are the #1 cause of crashes in the city of Carlsbad because of things like this. And so I just don't know whether this is going to make it better or worse. And if we don't do a survey ahead of time before we actually do this, I'm not sure if we're on solid ground, because I don't know whether it's in the MUTCD or if we're doing an experiment, which we should ask for permission to do. I'm not sure. I intend to abstain from the vote just based on this. I think that most of the things we're planning to do here are really great, especially those little lights in the street. But I'm really concerned about this issue.
Okay, so we're gonna let Mr. Kim answer.
As far as the dashed bike lane approaching the intersection, we're not doing anything new. I mean, it's going to remain unchanged. The proposed dashed green bike lane through the intersection, it is not described in the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It is not expressly prohibited either. It does, we got it from the Urban Bikeway Design Guide, which is prepared by the National Association of City Transportation Officials, otherwise known as NACTO. And the Caltrans manual on uniform traffic control devices gives specific approval of the urban bikeway guide design items to be allowable in California. And so we used that reference as the basis for our recommended proposed dash bike lane treatment through that intersection. So if you have access to the urban bikeway guide, it's on page 58 and 59. Nathan's aware of that document as well, and it is approved by the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices to include the design items found in that publication.
Okay. So we're going to go to Commissioner Linke's question, because I believe that now we addressed most of the questions of the previous commissioners.
I actually heard a couple of comments regarding comments from Ms. Frankel regarding the approach to the intersections. And one, John explained the treatment for the dashed green through and the conflict areas. It's not a striped bike lane, so that's the big difference. We are not striping a bike lane through the intersection, and we would not do that. So on Leucadia Boulevard, where there was a fatality, that was in regards to a class 4 bike path. And so I just wanted to make it perfectly clear that we are not striping a bike lane through an intersection. So that's different. What we're trying to do and what our approach has been to date is to highlight the conflict areas. And so, Pete, you're right. Besides, as you mentioned, bicyclists going down on their own, a right hook is a serious concern. But there's varying opinions on what's the best way to treat that issue. And we're open to suggestions. This is obviously a public meeting, and we're having this dialogue in order to talk through the issue. So that's why we're proposing what we are proposing, is we believe it's the best way to highlight the conflict areas. We don't want to paint green paint throughout all of our bike lanes for several reasons. One is really cost. And then the second is when you do things throughout the entire city, the green paint will slowly lose its effectiveness with the drivers. They won't see the green anymore, believe it or not, and it'll just become another treatment that's unrecognized. So that's our thought. We wanted to save the green for transition areas and conflict areas. And yeah, so, and then the major point though, is we are not creating a bike lane through an intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Okay, Commissioner Linke.
So the first commenter was advocating putting green paint as you approach the intersection as well as after, and putting signage up. And so it seems that we have some bicycle proponents who feel that that's safer and others who don't. I think in previous meetings, we've concluded that we were only going to put it after because people who are driving cars might see that green area as they're approaching the intersection as an area that they shouldn't go into, even if it's dashed. So I just want to do the thing that's going to make the bicyclist the safest. And I'm getting a little confused now because we have some who think it's safer to put the green paint as it's approaching the intersection, and others that do not feel that way. And Commissioner Pensiers has an interesting point that, well, we could do a survey and find out if drivers understand that. I'm not sure. You know, you have to be surveying the right people, and that might be complicated. So at this point, I don't know if Mr. Kim wants to comment on the pluses and minuses of putting paint before an intersection. And there's also the signage suggestion, adding signs. I don't know, we don't want to have sign clutter either, where you got a lot of signs and people can't read all of them and understand them and don't understand the green paint. It gets to be kind of confusing. Ms. Frankel's comment, I thought, and I'm confused now, but I thought she was commenting more, let's put more green paint further to the south, which might even be outside the project area. Or I'm confused now, admittedly. So I don't know if Mr. Kim wants to comment and Commissioner Pensiers, whoever, thank you.
Yeah, the first comment by Simon Weedman, I think it was, had a request to expand the green treatment to areas south. And my response is that's not a part of the scope of this project. And so that discussion would have to occur externally. We are in communication with him, and we're trying to explain that there are portions of the city which he is requesting that are covered by future projects that will address his issues, and there are other areas that we're trying to get to via pavement rehabilitation projects such as our overlay and slurry seal. And so we'll continue that communication with him. As far as the issue of the green, dash green approaching the intersection, whether it's beneficial or not, I don't have the answer. Obviously, we believe that it was a beneficial thing, and we included that in our initial proposal. But hearing reservations, comments by our commissioners, we removed it and we replaced it with the proposal that you see before you. We believe that both are effective in their own ways, both are safe, and both are accepted and approved by the California MUTCD. So I don't feel like we're going out on a limb with an experimental approach. It is something that's described, both approaches are described in both the the California MUTCD and or the NACDO Urban Bikeway Design Guide. And that's one of the challenges for engineering. These are optional items, they're not required. They're purposed to enhance bike travel. And so what we do as a city for these optional enhancements, maybe they're not written in stone, maybe we go forward and do an evaluation of this project as proposed to see how that works. I do have confidence that the treatments that we're proposing would be beneficial. Whether or not it's more beneficial than the original proposal, I can't say. But the proposal as it stands has the dashed bike lanes approaching the intersections without the green treatment. And in order to highlight or give attention to the potential right hook situation, we've elected to show dash green through the intersection to visibly show the conflict area to the vehicles. And that is a treatment that's covered in that NACDO Urban Bikeway Design Guide that I mentioned.
Okay. So I trust and I know that staff did very diligently review and very thoughtful looking and taking all our considerations, because we've been looking at this, I believe this is the third time. So they tried everything they could to satisfy all commissioners' comments and questions, including all the laws and regulations that they have to abide by. So I support their approved staff recommendations. If we don't have any other comments or questions by commissioners, then I would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. We support staff's recommendations.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Hunter made the motion to support staff recommendation on item 3, with Commissioner Linke seconded. Can I go for a vote?
Yes. Commissioner Wanamaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Linke,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Pensiers,
Abstain.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Perez,
Yay.
Chair Goken.
Yes. So I need council's advice. Can a commissioner abstain or do they just say no?
Well, we have in our municipal code that every council member, and in this case, a commissioner, should vote unless disqualified due to a conflict of interest. Then a council member who abstains from voting acknowledges that a majority of the quorum may decide the question voted upon. And in this instance, we don't have an ordinance, a franchise, a resolution that requires a majority vote. So I'm reading from 1.20.130. So it's appropriate. The ordinance, though, does encourage a vote, but as long as Commissioner Pensiers understands that the majority will go ahead and make the decision here. It's in line with our ordinance.
Okay. So usually we don't have abstaining unless they're missed. Yes, Commissioner Linky, you wanted to make a comment?
I was just going to make a suggestion, maybe to Commissioner Pensiers, is you can vote no, but ask that the minutes reflect the reason he's voting no. I don't know if he's abstaining because he doesn't want to oppose the project, but has specific concerns. He can state, I'm voting no, not because I oppose the project, but because of this particular element or something. That's just a suggestion.
Okay. Commissioner Pensier?
Okay. Yeah, I think that the vast majority of this is moving in the right direction, but I'm really concerned about the putting green paint through an intersection, and I don't think it's going to help at all with the right hook situation. And but I don't know for sure. But that one thing has I don't want to oppose it, and recognize everybody I don't want to stop it from going through. I just don't want to endorse it, that part of it.
Okay, so do you want to change your vote? You want to change your vote to no instead of abstaining?
Is that better? I really would like to see everything except that.
Okay, that's fine. You can keep it as abstain. Okay, so the motion passed 6-1 with Commissioner Pensier abstaining due to the reasoning that he just gave. Okay, before we move on, let's take a 5-minute break because we're almost on our 2 hour, and I'm sure everybody can stretch their legs. So I'll see you back. Let's do 6 minutes by my clock. So it's 4:50. I'll see you back.